whatever your concept of God is, whatever your religious background, every one of them has the same issue. I don't feel worthy. I'm not very good. I'm a long way from perfect. And I don't think God is happy with me, nor does he even care about my happiness. Happiness is trivial. He wants me holy. He wants me sacrificial. He wants me humble, but he doesn't want me happy.
Mike, Jeff, welcome to the show.
Hey,
Great to be
Aaron.
here with you, Aaron. Good to see you, Jeff.
Mike, it's great seeing you as well. We're in different states. I'm in California right now, and you're in Texas, and I think Aaron's in Texas too.
Yeah, Jeff, why don't you come and join us in Texas and we can all just
Yeah,
do this in person, eh?
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I do live there, but right now I'm visiting family. So,
Understood. Understood. Well, to kick this episode off, I'll ask you guys each individually, and Mike, you can go first. But I have a very serious question. The most important question I'll ask you is, how are you doing? Like, actually, like for real, how are you doing? So, Mike, you can go, and then Jeff, you follow.
Aaron, I'm doing well. I was just considering before coming on here whether the principles of this book work because I have been severely tested in the last couple of months, and I can say that everything is good. I'm doing amazingly well. My wife, Kathy, was doing some in home decorating and standing in a wingback chair. She tried to take a heavy vase off of the mantle and fell and broke her femur in 8 places. And it was a compound fracture. She was home alone. She had to crawl to her phone. The wound was bleeding terribly, and she could have been not with us. But help got here. The surgery was successful. We're 9 weeks behind it now, and she's starting to get up and moving around on a cane. And I'm thankful, and it's been my pleasure actually to be with her and take care of her for the last 9 weeks. But with that said, I can remember a time when I didn't know or have down the principles of this book, and I would have been really wrecked. Somehow, there is some real stuff you can get your teeth into that works even in the most trying circumstance. You don't lose that sense of joy and happiness. And it almost sounds disrespectful to think, how can you be happy and going through something like that? No, no. That's one of the mistakes we sorted out in our research for this book. There is nothing trivial or weak about happiness. It
Hmm.
is solid. It is real. It's not fleeting. It's not a mood that comes and goes because everything's going perfect. It's deeper than that. So I'm doing great.
Beautiful. I love that answer. Thank you for sharing, and I'm glad your wife is on the up. That's
Thank
amazing.
you.
So, God bless
Thank you.
that. Jeff, how are you
yeah,
doing for real?
yeah. Just to comment on what Mike said, I've had the privilege of being up with Mike. I'm in Austin area, so I've been up with Mike and Kathy, his wife, during this season, and my wife and I were both commenting on uh, what like a joy it is to see him model um, what it means to be a husband in a situation, a context like this. And it's just cute. Like watching both of them is like watching two butterflies flirting with each other out in the backyard. One just happens to have a wing that's not quite working well. It's in the process of getting healed. But to answer your question, I think just, for me, we're in a great season right now. We haven't, I feel like I've been in more of a supportive role in the past 6 months to other people. But the beginning of the year, I came through like a very difficult health scare, and the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong. And our mind already kind of jumps to the worst case scenario, and I thought that I might have cancer, and I was just like processing through all of that. And I remember just kind of slowing down and being present with each moment, allowing myself just to be present with each moment, and practicing the beatitude of blessed are those who are poor in spirit. Like there's a certain kind of bankruptcy of a spirit when you aren't sure, am I going to live 6 months? Am I going to, and you're not. And so you're in a very vulnerable place. And I remember sitting in that place, was at the beginning of this year, and I came through that just fine. But I was telling my wife, I was like, I feel like those moments of sitting in a space of utter vulnerability and complete dependency on God, and not being able to depend upon myself, not being able to control my future or control what's going on, and just going, okay, I'll take a deep breath here and I'm going to trust. Were some of the moments I have, like this year anyway, I have not felt more alive than in those moments. Like there was a presence with me in the kind of throes of that difficulty, but got past that, doing great now. And I'm actually just, I'm enjoying life.
Yeah, it's so interesting to think about both of your answers, and my brain just goes right to like the preciousness of life and how really that can only be sort of solidified and known through the hardships. I mean, people ask like the question all the time, if you're like a religious person, is like, well, why does God allow suffering?
Yeah.
It's asked a lot in the Jewish tradition. I'm sure it's asked a lot with Jesus. Like, why does he allow that? Well, like we sort of explained that right here. There would be no sort of beautifulness of life if everything went perfectly all the time, no matter what. I got everything I wanted. I had the car I want, the girl I want, this food I wanted all the time. I mean, we see that with like instant gratification on social media. It's like, well, where's the sort of the longer term vision of your life? How do you overcome those challenges to know that this life and the thing you want is really the thing you want because you had to work for it, because you had to try hard for it? And I mean, my life is a perfect example of that. Like, when I lost my sister in 2018, like, boom, you understand immediately what the most important things are. And
Yep.
and you try to keep that with you. But it's very hard, right? Because then life happens and then you start to want stuff. And so I don't know, maybe you want to comment on that, but then I have a sort of a follow-up question there.
I it's well said. I think like one of the things Mike and I discovered in the process of writing this book is that the happiness that Jesus offers is not a happiness that comes to us in the absence of difficulty, disappointment, suffering, pain, but it's a happiness that comes to us through the losses, the challenges. And so, in the Jewish tradition, of course, there's the 23rd Psalm that when I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, the shepherd is with me, right? Like it's not once I get through it, oh, here's the shepherd. It's when I'm walking through it, it's through it that I come to experience a shepherding force in my life that's with me in the most vulnerable, difficult, challenging, in the proverbial shadow of death, that valley of the shadow of death. So I agree with you. I think there is something to be said for we in the second beatitude. It's that idea that blessed are those who mourn, for they'll be comforted. And it's that idea that we can't experience divine comfort without mourning. Like there's no need for it, but when you need it, it shows up. And then we have this encounter with God in a way that we never would have had we not walked through a loss, a sorrow in our life.
Yeah. Mike?
Aaron, you mentioned one of the big questions philosophically, religiously, etc. Why does God allow suffering? And I don't know if this is theologically sound or not. I'll just tell you, for me, I think he probably allows it because he knows me better than me, and I needed it because
Mhm.
I hate this about life and myself. But the reality is, I don't grow as much. I'm not as good a person free of any kind of challenges. I thought it was funny. I went furniture looking with Kathy, and it's amazing to me. Of course, I'm an older guy, been around a while, but it's amazing in these new furniture stores how much big money distressed furniture is bringing. It's new, but they beat it up at the factory and they scratch the leather all up and they use sandpaper on it. And the young people even do it with jeans. They take a
Mhm.
pair of jeans and they bleach them out and they rip the knees and they're $200. Why? Because it's easier, dang it, it's easier to buy a pair of distressed jeans than make them look that way while you're digging ditches and working yourself, your fingers to the bone. Who wants that? So we're buying distressed furniture and we're fixing. I restore old cars. So I've restored a couple of classics that sold at the Barrett Jackson auction where you wouldn't even want anybody to touch it. It's so perfect. And then the fad comes along of rat rods and distressed paint. Just paint some clear over the old, sun bleached, worn out, and that's actually popular. Fix the mechanics, but make it look like it looks when it's been through some things. So, Aaron, I'll tell you, with my stage in life right now, a conversation is really boring to me with someone that's never been through anything because that's what makes life interesting, worthwhile. Somebody with some wrinkles and some scars and a limp to show for what they've come through, but they're still standing. That's an awesome conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, my mom is sort of the exemplar of this. She had a really rough childhood, but became an exceptional mother, just unbelievable, supportive beyond measure. And she always says, like, I just can't connect with someone who pretends one, their life is perfect, and just like thinks everything is like just like there's no like she's
Yeah.
like, I just don't get it. Life is not perfect. It can be
No.
beautiful, and there's so many
Yeah.
great moments.
Yeah.
But like if you just like that's such a weird sort of fake sort of vibe. And I always got that from my mom, who's like the most straightforward, real person you're gonna get, and an amazing mom. So I'm blessed to have that in my life. But it's very interesting. And so it leads me to think about, obviously we're talking about happiness. You guys wrote this book, but I think a foundational place to start would be, what are some of the misconceptions about happiness that you guys think are important to sort of maybe debunk or talk about? And then we can get into more practical steps, or as you guys like to call it, making room for what people can actually do to maybe become more happy or grateful or whatever word that sort of resonates with someone. So, Mike, if you want to take that first to start, maybe some misconceptions, and then we'll go from there.
Well, I think the first and greatest one, and it really is the elephant in the room, Aaron, is that whatever your concept of God is, whatever your religious background, every one of them has the same issue. I don't feel worthy. I'm not very good. I'm a long way from perfect. And I don't think God is happy with me, nor does he even care about my happiness. Happiness is trivial. He wants me holy. He wants me sacrificial. He wants me humble, but he doesn't want me happy. That's the biggest misconception we ran into with this book.
Interesting.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I would number one, I agree with that, and that was something that Mike and I said. I just to add maybe another thing that I noticed is in the West, at least with materialism, it seems like we're being fed this idea through social media that happiness is something that's external. It's something out there that I have to pursue, the pursuit of it. It's something out there that I have to buy. It's an experience I have to purchase. I have to go to a place to get it on a beach somewhere across the world, or I have to buy a certain car and then I get it. And so we're being fed this. We're being duped into believing that a purchase or something that I can get, an experience I have, that's what brings me happiness. And in the very first happy attitude, Jesus says, happy are the poor in spirit. So it's a spiritual reality that we're being directed to look at, that it has something to do with our spirits, something to do with that which is in us. So happiness is not something that we pursue. It's something that ensues in our life. And I think that's one of the misconceptions immediately that people tend to have, is that, I can go out there and I can, especially with the younger generation, if I get this or get that, I can have it. And the truth is, I've been to Nepal several times, and I've been out in the slums, and I've seen kids that don't have a floor, that live on a dirt floor. I've seen them out there with those little like a bottle cap from a Coke bottle, and they're sitting in the dirt and they're giggling and they're laughing and they're carrying on and they're crashing their little, you know, make believe cars into each other, and they're having a great time. And then they stand up and I come walking by and they run over and they jumping up and down. And it just, it supports this idea that there's something inside that gives us that sense of happiness, and it's not something external to us.
So Jeff, follow up on that. So then how do you sort of work with someone potentially like myself, right? Because I'm a big striver. I want to do things in the world. But I also understand sort of these fundamentals of happiness. How do I merge those two of like wanting more, striving for more, trying to be my best self, but also understanding that happiness is sort of an inside game. Like it feels like a sort of a tug of war there, if that makes sense.
For sure. I think it's something that we don't work for, strive for, but we work from. Like if
Mm,
I can acknowledge that I've made room in my life and happiness is already here. And so from that um safe, sound, grounded is the word I'm looking for. From that grounded space, I reach out and I accomplish things. I do things. I enjoy the life that's been given to me, but it's not something I'm striving for. It's a place that I'm stretching from. That might be the distinction that I would say.
mm. Yeah, because there's nothing better, right, than like having a great meal, great food with great friends, right? But I need money to buy some of those things. And so then people get into this sort of conversation like money is like evil. I shouldn't have money. It's like, that's not really the case. There is sort of a baseline that they found. Like once you reach this threshold of money, like anything above that is like, how many fucking private jets can you buy? Like it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
I can cover my things. I can go to a nice restaurant. I can have a meal. I know that if something happens, I can cover this stuff. Like, yes, everyone needs sort of their basic needs met. But above that, like it should be an internal sort of inside game. How could I, change the texture of my mind? How can I value what I have while I have it? Because it could be gone in a second. Like all of these sort of things relate to happiness. But I think as a Western culture, we've just related happiness to like having stuff that people think is cool. Which is fine. You can have your boats and all that stuff. I like going on a boat. It's fun too. But like, I'd rather have a family that loves me and me love them too, like as sort of the root of my groundedness, as you say. And then maybe I can want more, strive for more if my business does well or whatever the case may be. But that has to sort of be, I don't know if it's taught, learned, has to become through experience. It's sort of a very difficult thing. Cause like I'm 33 and just understanding it now. Like when I teach my son this stuff, will he understand it because I'm trying to embody it, or will he understand it because he's experiencing it on his own? Or like maybe it's a merger of the two. I don't know, just riffing here, Mike, if you got anything, off that.
Well, first of all, that's a really interesting question. I'm making some notes on that, Aaron, because that really has me thinking. That's a great question because from our standpoint, scriptures teach, as a theologian, we understand scriptures teach striving. Uh, the scriptures are about growing, finding a promised land, expanding your territory, building a bigger tent, having more children, abundance. Scripture really comes from an abundance viewpoint and not a lack and starvation viewpoint. But then it goes to what Jeff was talking about. Am I working hard? Because listen, that's in the scripture. I was looking at some scriptures this week for a little thing I was writing about what does it really say about working hard? Am I supposed to just inherit everything? Am I entitled, or am I actually supposed to work? So I relate to you because I don't know if I would have used the word striver, but I work hard, but the difference is I have worked hard before to be accepted. That doesn't result in happiness.
Mm,
I've worked hard before to be seen as cool. I can remember, boy, this is going way back, Aaron, but I can remember when I was a kid that it cost $2 or $3 more for name brand Levi's instead of those like J.C. Penney jeans or something. And they didn't have any, the Levi's had that little curve in the sewing on the back pocket. And those plain old J.C. Penney's jeans had nothing on the pocket. And there was no kid going to wear those. Any self-respecting boy, 13 years old, was not going to show up with a pair of plain pocket jeans on the back We wanted a new pair of Levi's so stiff they could stand in the corner by themselves. But they were $2.50 more than the plain ones. So why did I want them? Well, I wanted them because I wanted to be accepted on the playground. So then when I got them, because my folks are old school, they're like, you want those? You get a paper out, you throw newspapers, and you buy whatever kind of jeans you want. So I did. But for the reason I strove for them, did it make me happy in the end? No, it didn't. I still ended up standing around the playground with the same issues with the bully or the kids that didn't pick me for the baseball team or whatever. That problem didn't go away. So the difference in working hard for what for? We've all been at, and I'll just make this comment quickly, feeding programs where you're helping the most destitute of the hungry. And somebody shows up as kind of a wannabe that wants to snap some pictures of them helping somebody so they can throw it into their resume. Then I don't think they get happy because of that. But for me, if I can go there and do that and not care that anybody sees me, but I see the smile on their face and I see the gleam in their eye and the thanksgiving they have for me handing them a sandwich or some hot coffee in the cold and a blanket, but I didn't come from a place of needing that from them, but it only added to what I already had. And it was a positive and a negative marriage that resulted in real joy.
Yeah. Jeff, anything to add to that?
I agree. When Mike was talking about that, I had this image of a pendulum that swings, and I think when it swings too far, you can go from work to striving. Like, it's healthy to work. It's important to work, but then you can start striving for all the things that Mike's talking about here. On the same time, when it swings to the other side, you can go from rest and recreation, which is very healthy, a Sabbath, to escape. Like, if it goes too far, you're escaping into an addiction, and I think there's just a healthy balance of work and rest and work and rest. And if it goes too far, you're striving one way. And if it goes too far, you're escaping in the other way.
Yeah, you're saying, there's a vice of excess and a vice of deficiency sort of in anything that you think about. And I think a lot about this idea of like activation energy for like young men specifically. Like I'll relate it to myself. Like when I was younger, the reason I started showering and going to the gym and looking at my personal hygiene is because to keep it blunt, I wanted to have sex with girls. That was my activation energy to get my fucking ass off the couch and do something about it. Now, I think that's okay, right? Like that's an external reward. I'm thinking only about the external. How can I be attractive to women? Okay, I got to shower, I got to get hygiene, all this sort of stuff, right? Normal stuff. But then once you start doing those things that make you feel better, there is a time where it switches to like, oh, intrinsic motivation. Now that I have it, I like going to the gym. It makes me more clear and mentally focused, and showering and having hygiene and looking good feels good for me. So I do think for young people, we don't have to demonize this idea of like wanting things, like you guys are saying. There is a sense of activation energy. What's going to get me off my ass? Then I think you do it enough over time. You're like, oh, I actually like doing this thing. This thing is cool. Or you're like, I don't really like doing this thing. It's not me. I did it because of this, and I'm going to pivot a little bit. So I do think there's a bit of that. And I think having a conversation like we're having that's well-rounded, that doesn't say you can't want anything, just like that's just never going to work, right? We don't live in that type of society. But for me, that's how I related to. That was my activation energy. Is like, cool, I want to have sex with chicks. Haven't had it ever. Like, how do I figure this out? And then, you realize that like that's not really a meaningful pursuit. Like, and then what about it did I like that I can actually add to my life that gives me more meaning and fulfillment and things of that nature? And obviously led to my wife, which is like the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. So there's, all that stuff. But I think about that idea of activation energy, if you guys want to sort of comment on that.
I don't know. When you said that, I was thinking of a ship. You can't turn a stationary ship. It's got to get going, even if it's going in the wrong direction. It's got to get some momentum in order for it to turn to where it needs to go. And I think that was the image I had in my mind when you were talking about activation energy. Eventually it gets turned in its right direction, but you're not going to turn it while it's just sitting there.
Yeah, that's true. Mike? Oh, hold on. You're a little muted. There we go.
I actually really like the idea of the motivations that come, and I think they're inevitable, Aaron. I think when we're boys, and we get motivated to clean up, like you said, because there's girls, and we've discovered that, and we've kind of reached the place where we quit pulling their ponytail, and we'd actually like to get to know them better. Um, I think the motivations get controlled where I'm thinking the pursuit of happiness is as natural a part of life as it can be. And it's almost like learned by default, like, okay, I tried that, spent a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of worry, and it didn't make me as happy as I thought. But so I'm not going to expect that from that again, because it doesn't result in me getting what I thought I was going to get out of it. So that's where we kind of hit bottom, maybe in our 30s or 40s, where we're like, I've tried enough of these paths now, and I've kind of figured this out. It's like a hot stove. I've touched that before. I don't really want to do that again. That didn't lead me where I thought. And then hopefully we land on something that is the real deal, because our problem is we get stuck and even cynical about what didn't work out. And then we become bitter and we're miserable because we've tried this, and this, and none of it really made us happy. You mentioned the boats and all that a while ago, and that's a funny story. You know that old saying that the two greatest days in your lives when you buy a boat and when you sell it, because I can remember loving boats and thinking, man, I'm going to be happy with that. And I had this picture in my mind, even as a young single guy. I bought a ski boat. I had some nice skis, and look, I'm going to take a couple of buddies. We're going to pick up some pretty girls, and we're going to go skiing, and I'm going to be the man. Well, when you end up being out there at midnight and everybody has left and gone home, and you're still pulling that thing out of the lake and cleaning it and emptying the water out of the thing and throwing the trash away and pulling it by trailer across town back to your parking place. And pretty soon it's like, this is more work than it's worth, man. It didn't, and I didn't get three pretty girls on here. I got three ugly guys that two of them didn't know how to ski and one of them broke my rope. And this is just work. It's not resulting in what I thought it was going to. One of them drank too much and the other one is an idiot. And I had to take him home and I had a flat tire. And so life becomes real on its own.
Yeah.
And if we don't work through this and figure out this is not the path to happiness, I've got to find happiness somewhere inside of myself. And then I can do all of these pursuits from a whole different place. That makes sense?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. I would like to know, before we dive into some more details about the book, I would like to know sort of the genesis of how you guys linked up and made a decision to write this book. So, Jeff, if you want to start that.
Yeah, my the genesis of us coming together is probably about 2010 is when we met each other, and it was just an acquaintance at that point. But Mike has this really unique gift of being able to. He does it all the time. It's really fascinating. But he can look at somebody and he can almost just like see into the potential that they have, like the hope, the something that they probably can't see in themselves. He sees it. I think that goes to the whole point of him liking to restore cars. Like he can see that car in a finished state, even though that poor car can't see itself in a nice finished state. And he said a couple things to me about writing and really encouraged me. And eventually that led to us coming together to write. And then this is Mike, we haven't talked about this, I don't think, but I, I had gone through a divorce, a very difficult divorce. And I went through a retreat just to kind of get restored, like just to kind of, be empowered and be restored. And I went kind of at the last minute, but part of the retreat process was that you have to have, they surprise you with people writing letters of affirmation to you. And I had gone at the last minute, and he was the only letter of affirmation that I got. He wrote me a letter of affirmation, and that was after the pandemic. And it led to me reaching back out to him, and we got together just a couple of weeks later. And then we started on the project of the Real Happy book, of wrapping up the Real Happy book project. So that was kind of how we came how we came together. And it has been an absolute it's been a lot. It's been as much fun as it has been rigorous, as it would be writing a book. There's of course the rigor, but we've laughed a ton.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's beautiful. Mike, anything to add?
Well, and I love hearing that from Jeff, because Jeff is brilliant. He is highly educated. He's a great writer. And when Jeff and I got together, the more I learned about him and what he's talking about with me. And look, if I can do anything in life to spot potential in someone, I want to do that and lift them up. I learned something years ago, Aaron, that there's just not that many people doing that. I can think back over my educational career, and I am hard pressed to think of a teacher that did more than just teach me what the book was saying, but pull me aside in some desperate times when I really needed a friendly arm put around my shoulder to say, Mike, I see something in you, and I think you could make something of yourself.
Yeah.
I don't remember that. If it happened much, I'm sorry, but I didn't get that much. And I also was raised by a generation coming out of and after World War II. My dad was in on the end of that. That generation also was not the huggy, encouraging type. They came out of the Depression. They came out of a world war. They were trying to put their lives back together. We didn't know what PTSD was. I just remember at a family reunion that happened over 4th of July, somebody started setting off firecrackers, and every adult man in my family hit the ground and crawled up under the picnic tables because they
Wow.
were so traumatized by war. They frankly didn't have time to encourage us as the kids coming up. They were just trying to survive. And I've tried to set my face a different direction to say, and look, with the issues we could talk about, like fatherlessness in this country, and in some ethnicities, 60, 70% of those communities with no father in the home, I just can't wait to find a kid waiting on me at my table or bringing me iced tea to say, man, I see something really special in you. What's your dreams for your life? What do you want to do? And the way it lights up their face. And I have to think about you, Aaron, telling us when we first met for a pre-meeting of this about coaching baseball, that you coach baseball kids. And that's so admirable. A coach, did you know, Aaron, that when kids across the nation were surveyed about what the most influential relationship in their life has been that helped them, a coach was 5 notches above a pastor or rabbi.
Wow.
A,
I mean,
a
I can
coach.
say the same for myself in my own experience.
Yep. Yeah. So when we get the chance to lift people, and when I saw Jeff, I saw his brilliance and his talent. And I think one of our early conversations, and forgive me, Jeff, it was too bold at the time, but I just told Jeff, I see you writing books, and I don't know why you haven't done that already. Look how good you are. Look at the brain you've got. Look at the education you have. Write books. And at first, it wasn't a collaboration. And then the more that we learned to relate, and of course, Jeff was living in San Francisco, and it was easy to head up to Napa and hang around a couple days and relax and talk about writing books with a nice glass of wine. And it's just been a beautiful thing for more than a decade now. Uh, and Jeff is the brilliant one of this collaboration. Once in a while, I get an idea that works, but Jeff is a brilliant writer to collaborate with, and a deep thinker. And I'm not as smart as Jeff is, but I will tell you, I'm bored with most conversations. I'm just tired of, you can only go so far with the weather and whatever and the sports team you're following. And after a while, you'd really like to talk about something of some substance that kind of gets the gears turning, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, man, there is like just nothing more powerful than, for at least a young man, a male role model that you look up to saying, dude, I fucking believe in you, mate. Like
Yep.
straight up.
Yep.
I mean, there is
Absolutely.
a stat that there is nothing that will cause a young boy to take a downward spiral faster in his life than losing one male role model in his life. And it's the same in reverse. He adds one male role model in his life exponentially gets better. And
Yep.
it's such an interesting vibe because I know a lot of great men. I've met so many great men. I've met some bad ones, not really bad, just like not that great, but like mostly really good dudes,
Yep.
especially in the sports world, who like spend all of their weekends just wanting to help kids.
Yep.
And like we have to encourage more men to want to step into that behavior, to go to schools, to have a mentor, to find a young kid they want to hang out with, who especially is in a single parent family. But like a lot of like weird vibes and culture make men seem uncomfortable that they want to hang out with young boys like there's some sort of creep or pedophile, because that narrative has been going around, which is disastrous. Of course
Yep.
there's been men who do bad things. Everyone's done bad shit. I hate that having the caveat has to be said about that, but like there's so many good dudes who just want to help out. And like I can name 3 coaches right now who like changed my life. Coach Smith, Coach Keith, and Coach Ruben always believed in me. This like
Yep.
unbelievable, no matter what. I mean, I had great parents, so like I'm the luckiest man in the world. But those 3 dudes just said, Aaron, you got this, man. You could do it. Like we'll
Yep.
help you and all these sorts of things. It's like such a beautiful vibe. And like we got to encourage more men to want to be young role models, or excuse me, role models for young men. It's such a huge thing, especially in our society today, and like the conversation around masculinity and all these sorts of things. But it's something that I deeply care about and heavily relates to, what we're talking about here. So yeah, I don't know. I can ask another question unless you guys have some more things you want to say about that.
Aaron, just to jump in here on this, because I think our culture suffers from a lack of a rite of passage. Our young men don't have
Mm,
a rite of passage. We don't have anyone that tells us, that looks at us at a certain age and says, you're a man. And here's how a man behaves, and here's what a man does, and here's how a man treats a woman. And we don't have anyone telling us that. And you have gone through a walkabout or a, whatever it is. We don't have that in our culture. And so the closest thing we get to that is what you're talking. It's a coach. It's someone that can come alongside of someone else and say, here's where you are, and I can see you getting here. And usually if the coach is really good, they understand that sports becomes a metaphor for life. It's not that everybody on the little league team is going to make it in the big leagues. That's not going to happen. But what will happen for every one of them is there's an opportunity to learn life skills and how to become a really good adult, how to be a team player, how to win, how to lose, how to all of that stuff that's part and parcel for that. And really how to find that sense of what both you and Mike are talking about, that what happens is somebody has confidence in you, and them having confidence in you somehow transfers to you learning how to have confidence in yourself, that you
Yep.
typically don't just get it on your own. It's somebody says something, does something for you, and you're like, wow, that fits. That I like the way that fits on me. And then all of a sudden you get going a little bit, you get a couple wins under your belt, and you're able to, mature. But I love the conversation. I love what you're identifying. And I do agree, for anyone in our audience right now that isn't a coach or is not involved in helping either at a boys club or something like that, helping the next generation along. It's something that anybody can do. Like if you've got just a heart, you can look at somebody else that's younger. You don't even have to join an organization. You can just look at somebody else that's younger and say, you've got something in you that's worth living for, your dreams, your
mhm.
hopes, your desires.
Yeah. Yeah, if the idea is that if we want better men, we have to be better men. And I think
Yep.
that's very true. So you mentioned something earlier, Mike, that now I want to touch on. It's a very important part of your book, is that your happiness is important to God. That's what you said. And I just want you to sort of expand on that. Why should we feel that way? Why do people not feel that way? And anything like that.
Well, I think part of the story is that from the biblical narrative, even in the garden, that God created Adam and Eve and then said for the first time, this is very good. Over all the animals, the oceans, the nature, everything else, he had said, this is good. And then he said, this is very good. And it says that every evening when it was cool, he would come and walk with them in the garden. This was a relationship that was enjoyable. God wanted them to be happy and fulfilled and go out from the garden and make the whole world look like this place, because man can't be intrinsically happy with nothing to conquer. I mean, we men are conquerors. And part of what you've talked about here that is so troubling with the perversion and so forth that makes the news, for one thing, Aaron, it really has hurt the coaching world and all, where men don't want to be put in a world where everybody's looking at them weird because they want to work with kids. And so there are less people volunteering for that. But when you understand that, and even in our study, we found out early on that the word in the scripture, blessed, which sounds like a real religious word, blessed are the poor in spirit, that word was picked up in about the 15th century. The original word is makarios in the Greek, which the New Testament was written originally in Greek and Aramaic, the Old Testament in Hebrew, of course. And makarios was, I think this is really neat. Jesus was, came on the scene in the first century when the Greek world had been world dominating, and then the Roman world was taking that over. But the Roman world was still filled with Greek philosophy and Greek culture and Greek architecture and everything. So almost like we use the word cool, a Greek word makarios, even for people that didn't speak Greek as a native tongue, was a hangover word for happy. It meant blissful or happy. But when the Greeks used it, it meant this is only attainable for the gods. You know, the Greek had the pantheon of gods, and the word makarios was like, look, man is screwed up. We made a mess of things, and the gods are happy. There's wine gods and sex gods and building gods and pleasure gods, and makarios is only available to the gods. Us commoners down here don't have a chance to be happy. And that's what's so revolutionary about the teaching of Jesus when he comes to an audience who spoke Aramaic or Hebrew and uses a Greek word and says, makarios, unbelievably happy can you be if you'll understand how to do it. And I'm going to give you 8 steps to do that. And the first one is give God some room in your life to add happiness. He wants you happy, but since you don't believe he does, you've tried to fill it with all this stuff. So you've got boats and girls and big houses and gold coins and all this stuff stuffed into the safe box of your life, and you're still not happy. So how about let's clearing some of that out and make space for happiness, intentionalize it, and understand that God made you as his highest creation to be happy. For me, Aaron, that was the biggest roadblock I had to clear, because I was raised, a lot of my Jewish friends here in Dallas that I run with talk about Jewish guilt, and they're like, look, man, you never experienced guilt as a Catholic or whatever you are as a Christian until you experience some Jewish guilt. But look, I had too much of that in my religious upbringing. I don't even know where it all came from. Maybe it was just me, but I was just guilty of everything, stuff I hadn't even done. And I was sure that God wanted to squash me as a bug. Wherever he is, whatever he looks like, he wants to squash me like a bug. And the last thing on his mind is to make me happy. Because it's not possible to be happy and be worried or shameful, filled with shame at the same time. And that's the other half of the sermon, is that when Jesus finished these 8 principles, the other half of his sermon, Aaron, he attacks. That's a strong word. He attacks worry. That's where he said, that's why we use this poppy we put on the front of our book, because the original language, he didn't use the word lily. It's become a famous phrase where he said, consider the lilies. And the original word is poppy because they were native to Israel. It's the Israeli state flower now. And he said, consider the poppy. They're not working hard. They're not worrying. They don't know if they're going to be watered tomorrow or not. But their face is open to the sun and they're waving in the breeze. And he used it as an analogy to happiness. So he's like, you are not ever going to be happy and be worried at the same time. So give that up, lift your chin up, believe good things are coming for you, get out there and work hard, and worry is absolutely unproductive. He even used some really practical things. He said, like kids wanting to play basketball. He said, which one of you by worrying can add 1 inch to your size? You'd like to be taller? Worry your way into growing 1 inch. Doesn't happen. So that's the antithesis. I thought the opposite of happy was unhappy. Then I learned that the opposite of happy is worry. And I've got to do something about that. So that's where our journey began.
Fantastic. Jeff, what do you have to add to that?
Not much. I mean, I think he really covered it well. You know, when I think of the relationship between our view of God and our happiness, when I think of that, I think that however we view God is really a reflection of how we view ourselves a lot of times, right? And so if I think God is angry or hapless or a killjoy, I tend to see that in my life as well. And I think that subtle shift of coming to see God as joyful, as a God that delights and enjoys us. There was this great article. We've been talking about coaching here, but there was this great article, and I can't recall. It was in a psychological journal. I can't recall where it was, but the idea was that if a kid is told by a parent, a coach, or a teacher that, I love it when you hit the home run. I love it when you make a touchdown, and they're performance driven for joy, which is what I did to my kid growing up. He said to me one time he was playing soccer and he made 4 goals one day, and we're walking back to the car and I said, "Do you like soccer?" He goes, "No." I go, "Really?" He goes, "I just like it when people cheer for me." Right. And, but this article said that, the kids that said that they had a coach or a parent or a teacher in their life that would say, "I love to watch you play." Not, "I love it when you succeed. I love it when you win. I love it when you hit the home run. But I love to watch you play." That those kids had a very healthy disposition towards life because they felt they could just enjoy it. But the other kids felt like you couldn't enjoy it unless you competed to a level where you beat somebody else. And I think that subtle shift there is like taking this now towards God. If I can see God just enjoying me, not because I won, not because I'm better than somebody else, but just enjoys me enjoying the creation that I've been placed within, that is such a healthy way to approach life. And so that, to Mike's point of having a view that God loves to watch me play or God loves to watch me enjoy life, it sets me free from having to compete or be better than someone else or becoming jealous that somebody is better looking than me or has a better this or a better that. And I can just enjoy the life that I've been given.
Yeah, it's a beautiful idea to praise effort over outcomes. That's what we talk about in sports all the time. And it's so funny that you mentioned that because every single season when I speak to parents, I'm like, the only thing you should say to your kid when he gets in the car is, "Little Timmy, boy, did I love watching you play today." That's it. Conversation's over. And you're going to just see the immense amount of work he wants to put in over and over. And of course, you can say after that, like, you could talk about the game if he wants to talk about it more, ins and outs, technique, sure, all that stuff, whatever. But like paramount, number one, like you said, like that's it's like, sweet. You love watching me play? Great. If
Yeah.
you didn't, but it's a brilliant, brilliant thing. But then that leads me to this idea of thinking about gratitude. How does gratitude fit into this idea of happiness, or how God views happiness, or how you guys view happiness based on your book? Mike?
I was just thinking a minute ago when Jeff was finishing up, Aaron, that I was reading one of the great rabbis of the past a few years ago, and he said something so profound. I'd never thought of this, but all of us think about like the afterlife and what is God going to think of me when my life is done? And this rabbi said, what if when you face God at the judgment, when this life is over and it's time for eternity, what if he doesn't call to mind your mistakes or your sins or even your victories? But he said, here's what I think he's going to do. He's going to look at you and ask you, did you enjoy everything I gave you?
Mm.
Were you happy with what I gave you? Gratitude. Because if we can't do that, you can't amass enough stuff to make you happy if you're not grateful. And if you're grateful, you don't need as much stuff. And you really do reach that place where you enjoy someone else doing it as much or more than you. And when you were talking about coaching, we've all been 13-year-old boys. I would have run through a brick wall for my dad or my coach who believed in me and told me he thought I could. I would have tried.
Hmm.
And on the other hand, I hear about and you see these fathers who are just, they don't mean wrong, but they're insecure, I guess, themselves. And those scenarios where you see a dad say to his kid, those three home runs were great, but you had four at bats. What about that? What about that other one? You can always do better, son. You could have done four. Uh, I know when I was 13, that was the most deflating language I could ever hear.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, just an affirmation of what I believed I could do. And that goes back to even parents who aren't grateful. Your scenario can change so quickly where you start to think about the little things when you end up at a bedside at the hospital or attending to someone who had an accident and their life has changed forever. It's amazing what small things you can get grateful for as you start to come through that crisis. I don't like the fact that it takes a crisis for us to think that way, and it shouldn't. And maybe if we don't require a crisis to be grateful for everything, um, then we won't have as many crises.
Yeah.
That's
Jeff,
my
anything
thoughts.
to add,
Yeah, it's a
Jeff?
great question. I love this question. And by the way, I think gratitudes are one of the unique features of humanity, right? Like it's something that we can offer when we can look at somebody else. It's a posture of humility. Like I couldn't have done this on my own. Thank you so much for this. Thank you for, and there's a story that comes to mind, that I think gets at this idea that Mike's talking about. Jesus is out in the wilderness and there's this huge multitude that comes out to him to hear him teach. And they've been out there all day long and they look around and there's like 5,000 men. So there's probably close to 15,000 people out there because in that culture and world, they didn't count. They just counted the number of men, but packed with people out there. And one of his disciples says to him, "Hey, we should feed these people, And Jesus is like, "Well, what do we have?" And he goes, "Well, there's nothing but a kid here." I get a kick out of this. Like one kid was adult enough to think to bring a sack lunch. There's a kid here and he's got 5 loaves and 2 fish. And so this disciple says to Jesus, "But what is that amongst so many?" Like it's the scarcity mentality of all we have is 5 loaves and 2 fish. That's it. And the story goes that Jesus received the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and he lifted up his eyes to heaven and gave thanks. And when I think of that story, like everybody else is going, it's not enough. And yet he's posturing, I'm grateful for 5 loaves and 2 fish. Yeah, there's 5,000, but I'm grateful that we have 5 loaves and 2 fish to work with. That's what we have. And so thank you for 5. And I think gratitude postures us for the miracles. That
Mm,
if we're not grateful, we can't participate or experience the miracle, because our hands clenched tight around what we do have in this scarcity mentality. But the moment we open up our hands in gratitude, we realize that it's not that it's being taken from us. It's that something else is being given to us when we give away a moment of gratitude and thanks for whatever it is, however small it is. And so that story is, for me, is always a reminder that even if all I have is my breath, I can stop and go, thank you. Thank you for that breath. Like, there is something in my world that I can be grateful for at all times.
yeah, that's absolutely beautiful. All right, one last question here to wrap us up. For each of you, obviously, is there one thing that maybe I failed to ask you, or that you really want to mention about the book, or the process, or about happiness, or about Jesus in general, that you want to sort of close us off on before we jet off into the sunset?
Well, this has been a great time together, Aaron. And again, we thank you so much for having us on and talking about the book a minute. I think one of the things that stands out to me is that in a world that we look at now where there's can be so much strife and campus unrest, it always works like that among young people. It did in my generation in the 60s and 70s. That one of the Beatitudes is, happy are the peacemakers. And when we were working on the book, it was actually Kathy that pointed out to me, my wife, Kathy, and it was a great thought. She said, you know, Mike, you need to explore the difference between peacekeeping and peacemaking, because policemen and army soldiers and all that are there to keep the peace, but they're not always there to make the peace. They're not,
Mm,
they have weapons, they have clubs, they have jail cells, they can force the peace upon a people, but that doesn't make peace. So what does it mean to make peace? And you got to create something there out of what feels like nothing. But if you can fill your heart with enough joy and enough love, it's contagious. I thought about this question. I'm not sure why I was thinking about this morning. I was driving back home and I was thinking about that old scripture that says, love your neighbor like yourself. And one of the guys in the crowd said, well, who is my neighbor? And I started thinking about me in my neighborhood, trying to answer that. Like, who is my neighbor? How many of my neighbors on my block do I really even know? Because
mm,
it's amazing what computers and websites and Wi Fi has allowed us to connect with people all over the world that we'll never meet, but we don't even know the guy next door. So I don't know my neighbors. Well, in this case, I know a couple of them, but I'm actually going to intentionalize doing better about that. I want to know who my neighbor is. I want to do something for my neighbor. I want to know when they have something they need, because they're my neighbor. And so that question, who is my neighbor, comes up. And I think here again, I touched on something just now that we have created. Technology is creating a massive problem. There's a tsunami coming our way that's about to hit us right now of young people. I have a grandson that's 14, and I love that kid, and he has a beautiful heart, but he can't get his face out of his computer playing video games right now. That's his life. Every waking moment he can do it. And his mom said, man, I put this device on it and it's supposed to go off after 2 hours. I don't know what happened to that. I don't know how he hacked it, but he's on there all the time. But that doesn't create community. It doesn't really create relationship. It doesn't create you knowing who your neighbor is, and it doesn't create happiness. It's being proven. People are filling up counselors' offices trying to figure out, how do I connect? What's happened to me? Because I have the ability to be more connected than we've ever been. So I want to leave us with the challenge. My heart is, let's have some rumination about what can I do to make peace, not 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 force peace, not be a peacekeeper by just refereeing all the time, but what would actually make peace? because we've talked about several things here, and I want Jeff to finish this up however he feels. But we've talked about several things today that are not possible to maintain and be happy. You can't be worried and be happy. You can't be angry and be happy. You can't be afraid and be happy. You can't be insecure about everything and be happy. So, do we want happiness enough to be willing to drop some of these other things? I can't be angry about everything around me and be happy at the same time. So I'm going to choose to be happy and not angry. Maybe it's selfish, but I don't want to be angry. I want to be happy. And I'm going to get everybody I can to join me in that. And it's amazing how people give you a second look when you just smile at them. And then it's that second look and you get a smile back. And that's like a win for me.
Yeah. Jeff?
Yeah, I love this idea of the more you give happiness away, the more you have of it. Like and it's so contagious, right? It's such a smile's contagious. And I think that true happiness is, at least, when you're looking at all of those happy attitudes that Jesus speaks of, they're all in the plural. It's a community. It's a community. It's a city on a hill. It's a merry band of followers. It's a community thing. And so I think it's something that comes in, but then it spills over to everybody around you in your world, in your life. It's contagious and it's infectious. And so I was just thinking of that. And then I thought, if I was to leave something with our listeners today, I would like to just leave them with a moment of blessing, with a moment of with a happy word being declared over them, that joy is, you are fully permitted to receive joy and to take it by virtue of the fact that you were created for it. You were made for it. It's insatiable. Every decision in your life you make with hoping that you will be happy at the end of it. That we were made for it, we long for it. And so my desire for everyone listening is that somewhere between them turning off, between now and them turning off the program and going on to what their next task is, that they have a little whisper, a wisp, just a little experience of joy as it kind of flitters and flutters, and like a bird, it just kind of rushes into their heart, into their presence, and they can experience a foretaste of something that they were made for, that they were absolutely made for. And I would say it like this to our listeners. I would just say, just stop and take a deep, 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 deep breath all the way in. Breathe it all the way in, all the way into your heart, all the way down into the deepest part of you, all the way into the very back corridor of your mind. Breathe that air in, and then know that in the properties within that air, there is joy, there is peace, there is love, there is goodness, there is all the grace that God has for you in your life. And it is right here, right now, in this moment. And then now, as you exhale out all the worry, all the fear, all the doubt, all the negative voices that say you're not enough, you don't have enough time. Exhale all of that out. And what you are left with is a space that is ready, and it's been made. There's been a room made for happiness and joy to come in.
What a absolutely beautiful way to wrap up one of my favorite conversations that I've had in a while. So
Yes.
thank you both. Yeah. Thank you both for sort of being radiant exemplars for men in the world. It's much appreciated. Thank you for writing the book. Thank you for putting it out into the world. If you do want to buy the book, it's just linked. It'll be linked in the description below, and also where you can find Mike and Jeff if you want to ask some questions or check out more of their stuff. But once again, gentlemen, thank you. You're very much appreciated.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks to you, Aaron. You do a great job. I like you. I don't know who you like for the World Series for Little League. Who's going to win it this year?
All I saw was that Texas was still in it, so maybe they'll go. They got some dudes, I'm sure. My mom is really into the Little League World Series, so I'll ask her and then I'll give you a better answer.
Okay. Well, this has been really beautiful, Aaron. Thank you, and good luck and blessing to your family and all that you do.
Thank you. Thank you very much for tuning into that episode. And if you enjoyed it, click right here for another full-length episode of the podcast. And please don't forget to subscribe. But most importantly, above all else, please take good care of yourselves and others. And I'll see you next time. Lots of love. Cheers.